Hi everyone, before you dive into the episode, I just wanted to interrupt really quickly. You're gonna dive into this episode and you're gonna hear me call this podcast the Holistic Hustle Podcast. And that is because it used to be the old name of this podcast. And it was an amazing ride. I'm so grateful for the Holistic Hustle Podcast and what it served. But recently I've decided to rebrand the podcast based off the evolution of my own journey, my own story, and where God is calling me to go next. And so now the rebrand, which you may know already, is called Wisdom is Wealth. Didn't want you to be confused, so dive into this episode. They were an amazing episode, amazing guests, amazing insights, and enjoy.
People think that resting or regular rhythms of like breaks and renewal is the opposite of productivity, but it is one in the same.
Hi, I'm Justin Blanamo, and this is Holistic Hustle. Holistic Hustle is doing things for the right reasons, working hard for the right reasons. The healthy balance of what work and progression and accomplishment and success should actually look like. Welcome back to another episode of the Holistic Hustle Podcast. I have an incredible guest today for y'all, one of my dear friends and one of my original clients, Michaela Belle. Michaela is a certified life coach, podcast host. Fun fact, first podcast I've ever been on was Michaela's, and producer and creative director. She has coached over 500 women through her programs and one-on-one coaching. She's all about helping women discover that real growth isn't about doing more, but about being present with who they truly are. She's here for the women who are ready to stop chasing an idea of success and start crafting a life that feels authentically hers. One where joy is found in the little moments and power comes from self-acceptance. Basically, she helps women own their now so they can create a future that actually fits them. And I love that. And I've known Michaela now for a while, a little bit over 4 years. Like I mentioned, she was one of my original clients in JFF. And it was just one of those humans where sometimes you're advised not to become friends with your clients, or like you can be friendly with them, but don't build deep friendships. And that was out the door, I think, like on the first meeting with Michaela. Yep. And I don't even call her a client or a past client anymore. I just call her a friend. And she has just done incredible things in this world. She continues to do incredible things. And just one of the things that I love most about her is just her relationship and faith in God. And like when you experience Michaela, you experience God as her in the moment, which is just such a beautiful opportunity. And so I'm excited for the audience to have that opportunity today and just beyond honored to have you here today. So thank you for being here, Michaela.
Thank you so much for having me. And like, oh my gosh, what do I even say to that? I mean, the first time that we ever talked, I knew that we were going to be friends. You know, you just have those people that you meet and you're like, yep, we're going to be friends for like ever. So it's amazing. And I'm so proud of you, everything that you've done and watching your career unfold in the way that it has. It's just, I'm always over here like cheering you on. So proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. It took a couple initial crazy clients like you to trust me, refer a few people, and then the beautiful snowball took off. And I'm just happy we've remained friends through this. And I was just, before we hit the record button, I was telling her, actually, my wife is the one who signed up Michaela today. Yeah. We were driving a couple of weeks ago. She's like, yeah, Michaela's going to be on your podcast. And that's just how deep the friendship runs. And so we know each other very, very well. And like I mentioned, we've known each other for about 4 years. And I've seen you go through a decent amount over those 4 years. What is the number one thing you've learned about yourself in that process?
Ooh, that is a loaded question. We could have an entire podcast just answering that. But I think the short answer of that, because since we met, which was in 2020, I believe, 2020, yep. I was a single mom for like 10 years at that point. And then over the last year, got engaged and married, moved to a new area, went through a horrible custody battle and all while all that was going on, and then had a little baby girl while running a business and like not losing myself. And I think the number one thing that I learned about myself was that my intuition in life and business is spot on. And I've learned to develop the muscle of self-trust. And I didn't have that for a long time. Like I've always had really good intuition, but knowing how to trust it was a different story. And I think over the last several years of like doing a lot of inner work and healing and growing, you learn to trust yourself because you keep building that muscle. And yeah, so if I could say one thing, it's probably my intuition is really good and I now trust myself.
So important, right? It's one thing to have intuition or that internal nudge. And some people even say your intuition is the spirit inside of you. It's
Yeah.
another thing to actually listen to it and act on it, you know?
Yes.
And so honestly, I think trust in your intuition comes with acting on it, right? You learn how to trust the
100%.
thing by acting on the thing, you know? And I just think that's so super important. And one thing I can relate to is I think I've always trusted my intuition and always acted on it. But over the past year or so, with the growth of my business and the growth of a bunch of
Mm.
things, there's just a lot of moving parts. And I'm playing a much bigger game than I used to play. And
Yep.
so second guessing my intuition over the past year or so, right, has been a thing, and it's not led to great results. And
Yep.
I'm actually, it's funny you bring that up because, you know, over the past month or so, between my conversations with God, between my conversations with my mentors and with myself, the staff meeting that you hold up between the 6 inches between your ears,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's been, dude,
Mm-hmm.
you have to trust your intuition again, and you have to clear out things that aren't allowing you to either trust it and or act on it. And
Yes.
so important, so important. And
It
so
really is, especially in business. I mean, in life for sure, because I feel like I remember when I was in college and I was dating my ex-husband, I saw all the red flags. I had all of those like little baby, I mean, it was like a circus. It was red flags everywhere. But I did not know how to trust myself. And it wasn't until like you start using that muscle because people ask me all the time like how do you trust that, and you start with really small things. I mean, I'm talking don't take a left. Okay, you know what?
mm,
I'm going to trust that and I'm going to go right. Like tiny little micro moments of trusting yourself will lead to those bigger moments of trusting yourself because you do need it in life, especially if you're single and like you're choosing your spouse. If you're an entrepreneur, you better be very careful about who you choose because I think that your partner is so connected to your purpose and your ability and your ease of getting there. But also in business, there are so many decisions that potentially won't make sense to you, but there's a knowingness inside of you that you're like, I know that this is where I should go. So start with baby moments, those micro moments of self-trust, and it will grow.
it's amazing. And that's such good advice. But I think a big issue in the online space, the life coaching space, right, is there's a lot of bad advice out there. And I always say the most impactful advice in the world isn't the right advice, it's the wrong advice, right?
Mm.
And what is a popular piece of advice in the life coaching space that you don't agree with?
Ooh, quite a few. But I think the one that feels most relevant today is any conversation around productivity or time management that doesn't involve the conversation of rest and renewal. Because people think that resting or regular rhythms of like breaks and renewal is the opposite of productivity, but it is one in the same. So I want you to imagine you're in a forest and you're chopping down a tree and you are swinging away. You are doing all the right activities. You have the right tool in your hand. You're in the right environment. You're standing in front of the right tree. But if the blade is dull, you are going to have to work so much harder for so much longer to make the same amount of progress. And you have to shift from swinging to sharpening and go to that separate activity to sharpen the tool so that you come back and every swing, like nothing is different. You're the same. The tool is, it's the same axe. It's the same tree. It's the same forest, but every swing you make so much more progress. And I just think that we live in this world and we've been told that productivity is the action, it's the doing, that we forget that the sharpening is just as important, if not sometimes more
Or
important, right? And if you're imagining yourself sharpening the axe, you're probably not thinking to yourself, I feel so guilty that I'm not swinging. No, you know that by sharpening the axe, you're doing yourself a favor and you're saving yourself so much time. But people, when they don't know how valuable rest is, you feel guilty when you're resting. And you're like, oh man, I really should be doing, I really should be doing. No, you need to sit in the sharpening for a little bit and allow yourself to be there and know that every morning when you rest well, you'll wake up with a brain that's in an optimal state, with a body that's in a better state. So that's probably, and I could get fired up when I talk about this because we're just not taught it in the productivity space, especially I feel like women. We feel like we have to work so much harder just to be in the same conversation as men. Um, but yeah, so that's probably the thing. If you're talking about productivity, you have to be also talking about rest.
It's so good. And I think it's so important. And I can relate to that a ton. Over the years, I've learned that, especially as I got a little bit older, my testosterone got a little bit less, and honestly, I went on my own healing journey. Where I realized, my work ethic was awesome, but a lot of it I was just posturing, proving, and protecting, right? And I was just trying to gain people's acceptance through accolades, accomplishments, and achievements. And if I was resting, I wasn't doing that. So it felt counterintuitive to what the ego was calling me to do. But now these days, if I don't have anything going on the weekend, I will wake up, I'll go to the gym, I'll read, do whatever I got to do, and then I'll literally sleep all day Saturday. And after church on Sunday, I come home and I sleep all day Sunday. Right. And it's so helpful. And we'll get into sleep here in a second. But I think one thing I realize is I think people are starting to buy into or get away from hustle culture, and they are starting to buy into rest and relaxation. But what I'm seeing now is the pendulum swinging the other way, where it's kind of like God's grace, right? People use it as a license to continue to sin. Well, God's going to forgive me anyways, right? It's like, no, that's not the point. You know what I mean? And then, I see it all the time, with business owners, where they're just like, I'm just taking care of myself today. I'm just relaxing. It's like, you've been relaxing for 4 days in a row. Like there has to be a healthy balance between relaxing and actually doing. And so do you have any advice for people listening to this so they don't swing the pendulum so hard from hustle culture all the way over to like just thinking that they're going to meditate and nap $1 million to their front doorstep?
Yeah, exactly. And there does have to be that. I don't like to say balance. I don't like the word balance, but harmony. There has to be harmony between the two.
I like that.
So I think about it as you have to have a daily rhythm of rest and renewal. And for me, that has become my nighttime routine. And that's what I encourage all of my clients to do is have a nighttime routine that, one, it's just the fact that your nighttime routine greatly impacts your sleep. So having a nighttime routine impacts the physical rest that you're able to get. But also it's just like every single night, and we can talk about this more, but of like doing specific things, like doing a brain dump, or I call it a CTL brain dump, close the loop brain dump. And then having a reflection, checking in with yourself every single day. Like, what emotions did I feel today? Who was I with when I felt those things? What was I doing when I felt those things? What was challenging today? What brought me joy today? Having gratitude, journaling, just different things that help you connect to yourself. So I think one of the easiest ways to do that is just to develop a daily rhythm of rest and carving out something where it's obviously not the whole day, but then also figuring out, okay, maybe I do need one day of rest, right? I think that's why God created the Sabbath. Like it's not a recommendation. He knows how the body works. And, he tells us and he gives us instruction because sometimes he doesn't want us to learn through experience because experience can leave scars and is painful. And he tells you through instruction, like, hey, take a Sabbath, take 1 day a week. And then also maybe even figuring out there's a great book and the title just left my brain, but it's like, I think 7 forms of rest. I'll have to look up the exact title, but we all have different season of our lives where we need rest in different ways. Like sometimes we need social rest, or we need physical rest, or we need sensory rest. Like there's all these different forms. And in each season, it's kind of important to ask yourself, what kind of rest do I need? Like a lot of people need a sensory rest. You are on your phone way too much and you need a little bit of a detox, right? And you prioritize, okay, I'm going to focus this month on sensory rest. And the next month I really feel like I need some spiritual rest. So that's what my focus is going to be. So I think one, having a daily rhythm of rest and renewal being your nighttime routine, having a day every week for rest, and then figuring out in each season or each month if there's a specific form of rest that you might need.
It's fantastic advice. And it takes maybe a vague and broad topic and makes it practical.
Mm-hmm.
And when things become practical, you can practice them. And so I actually want to dive a little bit deeper into the nighttime routine, because again, before we hit record, and if anybody listening to this, they know me, they know my biggest issue right now is my sleep. I wear an Oura ring that tracks my sleep, and it's a good morning if I wake up to a 65, or I remember I think I had like an 82 a couple of months ago, and I sent it to my team and I was like, this might as well be a 200. And it's crazy. I can literally feel a drastic difference, a drastic difference. And the independent variable of, like, let's just say I had a great day today and a horrible day yesterday. The only difference was the way that I slept most times.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm starting to realize it's the nighttime routine that really optimizes the sleep. So if anyone listening to this is like, I'm having trouble winding down, sleeping, and waking up on time, like, what advice would you give them? And like, how can someone own their night, which is, the book that you have coming out, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Let's talk about that. How can someone own their night? That's a better question.
Yeah. So I was a couple of years ago, like really struggling with my sleep. I could not turn my brain off. I would get into bed and it was one thought after the next. And it felt like no matter what I did, I just couldn't make it stop. And sometimes if you think about it, if you go all day, like go, and you lay in bed, it might be the first time that your thoughts ever have an opportunity to be heard by you. Oh, and so they're just like, I've been trying to talk to you all day, and now I finally have my moment, and they're all coming at you, right? So that's what I was really experiencing. And it led me to read my very first book about sleep. And the first book that I ever read was called Sleep Smarter by Shawn Stevenson. I don't know what the cover looks like. I take all the covers off of my books because I like to color code them and because I'm weird. But they're in the foreword of this. I'm just going to read you the tiniest little bit because I had no idea that sleep had this much impact on your life. And the foreword was written by Sarah Gottfried. She's a doctor from Berkeley. And she said, when your sleep suffers, you suffer major consequences beyond the dark circles under your eyes. You're probably grouchy, not fun to be around. Key relationships and parenting will suffer. Work productivity declines. Your level of cortisol, which is a key stress hormone, is higher. That makes you eat more and store more belly fat. Your thyroid slows down. Insulin doesn't work. Your blood sugar gets out of whack. You can't clear the gunk out of your head or your soul. Your risk of cancer is quadrupled depending on the duration and volume of your sleep debt. You increase your risk of diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and heart disease. When you improve your sleep, you'll likely experience better skin, more youthful appearance, emotional regulation, and better relationships, decreased risk of stroke and cardiovascular disease, fewer accidents, lower levels of inflammation, enhanced function of the immune system, lower risk of cancer, hormonal balance, faster rate of weight loss, decreased pain, stronger bones, focus, longevity.
Goodness.
And I literally was like, wait a minute. What? I mean, I knew that sleep was important and all, but I had no idea how much it affected your brain and your body in those ways. And so it kind of led me on this I read so many books. I listened to so many podcasts. And the number one thing that everyone kept talking about was how impactful your nighttime routine was on your sleep. So I started this nighttime routine based on all of this research. And it's kind of like 7 different things that I started to do. But 7 things sometimes is overwhelming. Do you think that I should say all 7 or just start with maybe the first step?
Say all 7 and then tell us if you had to just start somewhere with just a few of the steps, what would you do?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So I made a journal, like a book about this because I was sick and tired of drawing it out myself. So the very first thing that I do is what I call a closing shift. And it's like your prep for bedtime. But if you think about a closing shift at a restaurant, if a restaurant closes at 9, the employees don't leave at 9, right? They stay and they do 2 main things. They clean from the day and they prepare for the next day. So kind of a similar concept. The first thing I do is like dim the house lights. And every single sleep scientist, sleep neuroscientist, every book podcast talked about the relation of light to your circadian rhythm. And your circadian rhythm is your internal clock. It tells you naturally when to wake up and when to go to sleep. Most of us, our circadian rhythm is off because it's always bright out and our body like doesn't know, it's not getting signals that it's time to start winding down. So one of the first things is just developing this better relationship with light and dimming the lights in the house. And then I take about 10 minutes to tidy up, especially the areas of my house that I'll visit first thing in the morning. So for me, it's my kitchen. I'll just put a timer on for 10 minutes and tidy up. Sometimes I'll keep going. I'll put another timer on for 10 minutes and do the living room and things like that. So just some way you tidy up. And then you prep for the day, which is maybe putting out your workout outfit or the kids' outfits or, you know, whatever trips you up in the morning is good to do at night. And then I just plug in all of my electronics, my phone, my iPad, and kind of put them to bed. So that's like the closing shift. And then the next thing I do, I call it an unwind cocktail, which is not a cocktail. It's just 2 different things, 2 different activities that help you unwind. So I have in Own Your Night, which is the book here. I have a list of different things that help you unwind at night. And it could be reading, definitely not a thriller though. You'll want to save thrillers for the daytime, but something that kind of calms you down, whether it's maybe reading the Bible or another book. I cannot read personal development at night because I get too excited.
Same.
Yeah. So something like that, or stretching, a skincare routine, breath work, journaling, a sleepy girl mocktail, like all of these things help you just for your body to go like, it's like an exhale at the end of the day. Then I do a little preview of my day tomorrow. I just look at, do I have any main things on the calendar? What am I having for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Preview of the day. And then a brain dump. This is particularly helpful for someone who's really anxious or an overthinker. And I call this a CTL brain dump. So close the loop. A lot of times we'll write things on a list, but we don't give it a next step or something to kind of close the thought loop for it. So anything that's on your mind, it could be your to-do list. It could be people that you want to hang out with. It could be, I got to make that doctor's appointment. It could be, I kind of didn't feel great as a mom today. Like this is anything that's on your brain. It's all the thoughts that keep you up at night, pretty much. You just get them down on a piece of paper and it creates space between the thought and you. And that is what allows you to clear your mind. And then nightly reflection, checking in with yourself. What emotions did I feel? What was challenging today? Where did I find joy? And then gratitude. I always do 3 little big gratitude points. I call them little big because they're tiny little moments in your day. They usually end up being the big things at the end of our lives. So finding tiny little moments that you're grateful for. And then I do 1 round of box breathing. And that is everything. So it's 7 things that I like to do after 7 p.m. If that is super overwhelming, which a lot of people, you don't want to start out doing like the most epic routine ever. You kind of want to start with one thing first. And I usually recommend people start with that closing shift. Dim the lights in your house, tidy up your areas that you're going to go to in the morning, prep for your day, whatever are the things that like just trip you up in the morning. For me, that's always outfits or breakfast. Like I literally hate making breakfast. So I love when I meal prep my breakfast and it's just like ready to go. Whether that's some kind of egg dish that I made the night before or overnight oats. That is super helpful for me because whenever you wake up, your willpower and your discipline is like a battery. And every single decision that you make wears down the battery. And so if you can wake up in the morning and so many of your decisions are already made, it saves you so much and you're able to have more discipline for the things that actually matter. And then putting your phone, iPad, putting those things away. One of the worst things that you can do just based on science is scrolling. That scrolling motion is actually very connected to anxiety. That it's just, it doesn't help us prepare ourselves for bed. So that is probably what I would tell someone to start with is start with your closing shift and then add things as you go. But even just one thing is super helpful. And in the book, in the guide, at the very bottom, I have a little thing that says I showed up for myself by completing at least one activity tonight, and you get to check it off. Because developing any routine doesn't mean doing the routine perfectly every single night. It just means showing up every night. Even if it's just for a couple of minutes, it's the act of showing up is really what you're going for. Not perfection, but consistency.
It's so good because like going back to the beginning of this, when you read from the other book, what was it called? Sleep Smarter.
Sleep Smarter, yeah.
How important sleep is. And it's crazy. And like the older you get, the more you realize it. Like I used to be able to operate off of like 3-4 hours of sleep. I'm like, it doesn't matter. And it's just because I was and that's 6-7 years ago where like I'm in my mid 20s and testosterone high as ever. And my workouts were dialed in, my nutrition was dialed in, and I was basically addicted to caffeine. So like I wasn't feeling tired because of a lot of those things masking it. But as I've gotten older, I'm just like, I can literally tell the difference massively for the good and for the bad, if you will, when I sleep good compared to when I don't. And then what I've come to realize is a lot of it just has to do with that nighttime routine. And a lot of the things that you were saying, like I don't do, or I scroll a ton at night. Sometimes I get a little anxious because of the thoughts that I didn't create space between me and them from a brain dump, a CTO brain dump, right? Then how I cope with that is picking up my phone and scrolling. And then I just fed myself 2 hours of blue light directly in my face, messed up my circadian rhythms, and I sleep absolutely terrible at best as a result. And so one thing I really do like doing, and I have Lauren help me with this too, as well, is like just the tidying up. Like I'm the first one up. I go into the kitchen, right? I walk through the living room. It's like, I don't want it to be a mess, having it be tidy just comes in and it doesn't stress me out. I don't have anything to worry about. I don't have anything to tidy up and use that battery towards, as you mentioned. And then a big thing with me is outfits get me in the morning because I need my workout outfit and I need my outfit for the day. And then days like today where I have 4 podcasts back to back and I want to make it look like they're different days, I got to have different outfits on, or at least different hats, right? And so just little things like that, it just limits the thinking in the morning. That's a big reason why Mark Zuckerberg, he has 1,000 of the same t-shirts and 1,000 of the same pair of jeans. He doesn't think about it each morning. And so I'm definitely going to be implementing the closing shift, and I like the lights. That's the blue light is tough, especially during football season though, because I just love football. I love Monday night football. I love Sunday night football. And so it's tough for me, the TV side of things, but worst case scenario, just eliminating the phone. So it's at least 10 feet away from me, the blue light, instead of 10 inches in front of my face,
Yes, 100%. And it's okay. Like if you have, nights where you don't do the full routine, like sometimes on Friday nights, my husband is a night owl and he's getting better at doing his own, own your night, but he's on his own journey. You know what I mean?
Your best case study.
He's going to be my best for sure. But But Friday nights, like we do like to watch a movie or do something, and it's okay to have those nights, whether it's Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football or whatever it is. Afterwards, after it's done, do something to unwind, do something to help you, brain dump or nightly reflection or whatever it might be, something to help you unwind. And from what the research shows, when you start to dim the lights, it's about 45 minutes to an hour after that is when melatonin is released. So I usually like to start my routine somewhere around that. Like if I want to be in bed by 10:30, I start my routine at like 9:30.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Well, this
You
is
know,
extremely helpful. Yeah, go
one
ahead.
last thing. Do we have a hot second?
You got plenty of time. Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I find really interesting, and I'm wondering if there's any research about this and the link to money and like spending. But when you sleep less than 6 hours a night, or you don't get really deep sleep, one thing that research shows is that the part of your brain that is like your impulse control center, or I call it your COO, is almost turned off completely. Very little activity there. And then the part of your brain that controls like your emotional reactions. I think of, okay, if this is your COO, like that's your creative team. And I can say that because I'm creative, but your amygdala is what makes you make those impulsive decisions, base your decisions off of emotions. And again, because that impulse control center, like the deep hedonic centers of your brain are off. So you like lose that. And I'm wondering if there's maybe even a connection between lack of sleep and like not being super great with your finances, just because so many of your
100%.
decisions are going to be made from like, well, I feel like buying this. And, I'm curious.
100%. I mean, to make quality financial decisions, you have to be logical, you have to be rational, you have to be grounded, you have to be clear. And if you're not
Mhm.
sleeping well, none of those things are possible. And 95% of the mistakes that we make financially come from us making emotionally charged decisions. And a lot of
Right.
times, the emotionally charged decision, yeah, like there's the impulse with buying, but most times it's fear.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you're irrational around fear is when you make the biggest mistakes with your finances. And especially as a business owner, like you have to be able to trust money. You have to be able to trust investments. Like you're going to be really terrible marketer if you're not able to bear a little bit of risk. Right.
Yes.
And when you are irrationally letting your fears control your money decisions, it's limiting you in so many different ways. And so,
Hmm.
yeah, 1000%, it's definitely impacting your money journey for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I could definitely see that. I was like thinking about it today, when I was preparing for this. I'm like, I bet that has a really strong connection to money. And that's
Absolutely
what I'm
does.
finding,
Yeah.
that sleep just has such an impact on so many different areas of your life. It's like the keystone habit of all keystone habits, which I'm sure you've read Atomic Habits,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. It is though.
Um,
It is.
so yeah, a keystone habit is just a habit that has a domino effect and impacts a lot of different areas of your life. And your sleep is, I think, the number one like keystone habit to focus on. So if you're looking for a habit or routine to start going into 2025, I'm just gonna like vote for
Yeah.
you so that you focus on your nighttime routine.
And I think it's an incredible suggestion because I always say, whether in life or business, I'm like, if I have 10 problems right now, if I solve one of them, will it solve the other nine? Right. That's
Yeah.
high leverage. Like if I solve one of these problems, will it solve the majority, if not all of these other
Mm-hmm.
ones? And
Mm-hmm.
solving your sleep issues most times is one of those high leverage points where if you pull that lever, right,
Yep.
it's most likely going to solve a lot of the other problems that you have going on without you even intending to solve those other problems.
Yep.
And so I think today's lesson or today's podcast, excuse me, was a great start. But as a lot of people know, like a 30-minute podcast isn't the end all
Yeah.
solution. And so I'd be curious, do you have any opportunities or programs going on right now for people to dive into?
Yeah, so I'm about to launch Own Your Night. It actually launches on my birthday, October 27th. One of the things that I feel like I'm known for as a coach and business owner is creating tools so someone can take knowledge and use it. It bothers me. Just teaching is not enough. You have to have a tool or something to implement it. So that is coming out and I'm so excited. I've never just sold like a physical product before. So this is my first, slightly terrifying. But it's helped myself and my clients so much. So I'm really excited about that. And then I have several programs. The one that I feel like is very front of mind for me right now is I have something called the Belle Collective, and it's a life coaching membership. So one-on-one prices are higher, right? And so a lot of people are looking for lower cost options for things, which I wanted to be able to offer. So we meet once a month and I just do live coaching with a group of women. Every single month we have a different focus to keep you on track. And there's always like a guide or a book or something to help them. And I teach a little bit of a lesson. They have that content throughout the month and then they can get coached on that specific topic. So that's called the Belle Collective. And that's just a recurring, anybody can jump in the end of every month to go into the new month.
Phenomenal opportunities there. I think you probably sold a few of your books here today with this episode. I know I'll definitely be purchasing it. But where can people find you and connect after this episode?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram probably most, and my handle is Michaela Belle, and that's spelled Michael with an A and then Belle with an E. Michaela Belle. And then my website is michaelabelle.co. And so I have a lot on there that's just like the book link will be on there. Right now, I think, well, I don't know when this episode is launching. But it's in a pre-order right now phase. Yeah.
We'll figure it out. I'll let you know.
You can check there and see. But a lot of my links are right on there for anything that I provide. It's all right on my website.
Awesome. Well, I encourage anybody listening to this to step forward towards Michaela, right? Just worst case scenario, shoot her a follow, shoot her a message. She's just one of those people that the rewards outweigh the risk of having her in your corner, in your circle, and, being able to absorb whatever she has available. I always say price is what you pay, value is what you get, and the value should massively exceed the price. And that's always the case with Michaela and her products and her services. And so you got a little bit of a taste of that here today. And I think that I might have been impacted the most out of all of the audience members. And so I just want to say thank you so much, Michaela, for coming here today. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me. As always, it's great to talk to you.
Of course. And just thank you for everyone for coming to another episode of the Holistic Hustle Podcast. As I always say, I'm just trying to create content that changes the world. And this beautiful topic called sleep, as you can imagine, and you learned here today, is very impactful to not just changing your life, but changing the world. And to help change the world, make sure you're downloading, subscribing, and sharing this episode with people that suck at sleeping. I'm sure a couple of my friends are going to be sharing my own episode with me here. And so if you know anybody this will impact, please share it with them. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Holistic Hustle Podcast.